Hi everyone, it's Brother Willis. Hope everyone's doing great. Just wanted to put together some information about Units 8 and 9 that we'll be working on over the next couple weeks. So let's talk about capital budgeting. What is capital budgeting? We've had a lot of thoughts that we discussed on the discussion board. It is long-term, it's big dollar assets. It's extremely important for the organization. The best definition I've ever heard in one sentence is the process by which a firm reinvents itself. So capital budgeting is the process by which a firm reinvents itself. Why is it so important? It's important because companies that don't do capital budgeting or research and development tend to go out of business. So if we have a product like an iPhone, Apple's a great example of this, is iPhone have a very fast life cycle. So for example, the iPhone 4 came out a couple of years ago, and within 2 years, it's completely gone through the product life cycle of growth, maturity, decline, and it's almost dead now. You might be able to pick it up on eBay, but for the most part, it's gone. So that is why capital budgeting is so important, because a company's success depends on it. Because if Apple didn't continually come out with additional products, new products, other companies would pass them by and Apple would go away. We've seen that happen. So why is it hard to find abnormally profitable projects? Well, first let's talk about what is abnormal profit. Let me use real estate as an example. A few years ago, like before the recession of 2008, 2009, real estate was going gangbusters. It seems people were making 50, 100%, 200% returns. But the actual required return for investors might be like 15%. So when the actual returns are higher than the required returns or the cost of capital, that is called abnormal profit. And when that exists in the market, what always happens is there's going to be an influx of participants. And we saw that in real estate. Everybody seemed to jump in. And what happened is that increased supply, which drove down prices, and eventually there was a recession because of oversupply. And really that's what causes recessions, is when there's an oversupply. Suppliers miscalculate demand, and they do that quite often. How do economists allocate scarce resources? Well, there's not enough good stuff to go around for everyone, so we have to discriminate somehow. And after centuries of trying different methods of allocating scarce resources, economists have arrived on what we use today, which is called price discrimination. So how do we allocate the good stuff? That we don't have a lot of, we increase the price. Here are capital budgeting evaluation methods that you've become familiar with over the past week. Payback period, net present value, and internal rate of return. Profitability index is the same as net present value. It's just expressed as a percentage. So payback period is the number of years needed to recover the initial cash outlay of the project. It does have its weaknesses, as we've discussed, but it is still used because it's easy, everybody understands it, and it's a quick way to weed out projects, because we have a lot of projects that we can consider. Free cash flow is what we use for that return. And Unit 9, we're going to get more into that as we talk about project cash flows. And as I have said, estimating the future cash flows is by far the most difficult part of the capital budgeting process, because we have to make so many assumptions. And we gather all the information that we possibly can in order to make the best decision. So here's the calculation for free cash flow. It's basically converting income into cash flow, because those are not the same. We have to consider things like depreciation, taxes, capital expenditures, increases in working capital, things that aren't necessarily part of net income, but they do affect cash flow. Net present value of an investment is equal to the present value of its cash flows less the initial outlay. If it's positive, we accept the project, but there are exceptions as we've discussed. Internal rate of return is defined as the discount rate that equates the present value of the project's future cash flows with the project's initial outlay. So what does that mean? It means that it's the exact rate of return of a project given its cash flows. So project A, if you calculated the NPV on this, it would be 13%. It's where net present value is 0. So it's kind of like the break-even point for a project. So how would management use this? If the internal rate of return was 13% and the company had a cost of capital of 15%, then they wouldn't want to undertake this project unless there were some other reason for doing it that made sense to the organization. So here's a real-life capital budgeting example. This will be similar to the one that you do in your groups. So let's say Honda's considering producing a new motorcycle. So here are the estimated capital expenditure and project cash flows in millions. So basically a project team comes in to management and says, hey guys, give us $600 million and we'll give you back these cash flows from year 1 through 5. So if you add up all those cash inflows, I think it's 800 million. So it sounds great, right? Spend 600 and get 800 back. The problem is that we're comparing apples to oranges. For example, the 600 million is present value. That's what it's worth today. All the cash inflows, years 1 through 5, are in the future. So we can't compare present value to future value. So what we have to do is the same thing we've done with the past few weeks, is calculate the present value of those cash inflows. And if the company's cost of capital is 9%, that's what it costs them to get their money, then that's what we should use to discount the project. So here's the solution. So I've shown in column C, those are the cash flows given in the problem. Column D are the present value. So we could calculate each one of those individually, just basically taking 50 million divided by 1.09 for 1 year. Just backing out interest is basically what we're doing. We could also use PV on each one of those years. Or we could use NPV, like at the bottom, to calculate the present value of all those cash inflows at one time. So after you calculate the NPV, it's negative 17 million. So under normal circumstances, we would not undertake this project. So the internal rate of return is 8.1%, which is very easy to calculate. I've shown the formula there to use in Excel. So good luck this week. If you have any questions, be sure to let me know.